Hey everybody, Kevin Hoyt, IBM Developer Advocate here, talking about a new beta feature for IBM Cloud Functions, which is also known as Apache OpenWhisk, or at least that's the open source seed for the IBM Cloud Functions implementation. And there's a new beta feature that just dropped recently, and I was turned on to it by a colleague of mine, James Thomas. If you haven't checked out his work, you definitely want to keep an eye out on that. And the feature is a new trigger. So just a little quick background, triggers in IBM Cloud Functions are something happens aside from the actual invocation of an action that invokes an action. So, a few examples here, Cloudant, right? So something happens in Cloudant, which is, by the way, the CouchDB is the open source seed for Cloudant. But so when something gets dropped into Cloudant new document, for example, right, with or changes to a document, what have you, that can actually trigger an action inside of Cloud Functions that maybe can do additional processing on it, or maybe build a report, or whatever the case may be, right? Other ones include Message Hub. The open source seed for that is Kafka. Why we don't name things after their open source projects, I don't know. And then GitHub. If someone makes a pull request or something along those lines, right? Someone makes a commit and you want to run off a new build. Other types of events like that. So the new trigger type is Cloud Object Storage, and that is so Cloud Object Storage is an S3 implementation. It's actually the open source seed for that is OpenStack Swift, and it effectively is just an object store like an S3, and it's actually S3 compliant if you're an Amazon kind of person. So there's integration there. But what happens is that when a file, or in this case technically I guess an object, is placed into Cloud Object Storage, you can now fire off a trigger into OpenWhisk. So I thought I would kind of kick the tires around on this, and so I built a new action to kick around. And I'll just kind of quick take you through it. The background here is to drop an image file in to the object storage and then have it analyzed via AI, machine learning, right? So in this case, it would use Watson to figure out what the context of the image is, and then put that report into a Cloudant database, which I guess technically could fire off another trigger, and we could do more stuff with it. But in this case, we're just going to take that step. So the code is actually just like any other kind of function. The difference is the definition of the trigger. So I'd show you the trigger in the UI here. It's kind of unexciting because the UI doesn't seem like it's quite baked for, like it doesn't show you what type of trigger it is and things like that. So that's work that I've done at the command line to define the trigger. Just a logical rule, right? Listen for changes in this bucket, and here are the parameters to access this bucket of files or objects. And then there's a rule, and the rule says, hey, when this trigger goes, go ahead and hit this action. And then, of course, that means we need an action. So the trigger and the rule were kind of just logical, if you will. They exist already. At least the trigger list exists already. We just need to kind of configure it. And the rule is very logical. And then, of course, the action. So the action here is not much different from any other action. The parameters I'll get from it are details about what happened in the Cloud Object Storage. So, for example, in this case, I'm going to look for something to be added. And when something's added, I'm going to go ahead and get the Cloud Object Storage security token, authorization token, so I can make requests against it. And once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and get the image itself that was uploaded. And so here, for example, params.endpoint, bucket, and the key, which would otherwise be known as file name. All right, these are some of the parameters that come along with the trigger being invoked. And so then I get the file. When I have the contents, by the way, that'll just be stored in memory here. We're not going to worry about putting it on disk. So especially since as a function, it's going to be destroyed probably pretty quickly anyway. So the contents are sitting in memory. We take the contents from memory, and it's the file as is. So we don't need to do any kind of transformations to it or encodings to it. We just send it off to Watson. The tricky thing that I found in this case is that if you're using a request or request promise or request promise native or any derivative of requests in Node.js, and you want to send this chunk of memory along, you'll definitely want to use the kind of specific version of sending the file. It says, for example, in the documentations you can send a buffer, but I didn't find that to work very well. It really needed this file name thing, and why, I'm not really sure. Like, it doesn't, from the receiving side on the HTTP side, right, for with inside Watson, it just needs the form key, which is images file, and then the value, which would be the bytes. I don't know why, but request doesn't seem to send it unless you specify a file name, so I would go ahead and suggest doing that. And then once it's up there, the classification comes back. And once the classification comes back, I'll go ahead and put the some of the additional details that came to the action on the document that I'm going to store. It's really adding it to the classification object. And now that I have all the details about it, I'm going to go ahead and put it into Cloudant, and then just return the Cloudant document as an object. You'll notice that I'm using a request promise here, so it's do this and then. Which is a great way to go about it. If you're more of an async await, I have a gist in GitHub link from the blog post that accompanies this video, and it includes an async await implementation. I'm kind of torn. I actually really like async await. It almost so much it feels a little dirty. Like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong when I can just make these declarative statements and not have to worry about stringing a bunch of odd things together. So I don't know. The verdict's still out for me in terms of straight up promises versus async await, but the both implementations are there. All right, so now demo time, right? That's what's going on. New beta feature, Cloud Object Storage, triggers, rules, actions. Do something with the action. In this case, put an image into Cloud Object Storage, put the data into Cloudant. Perfect. So Cloud Object Storage, here's the instance I'm going to use right now. It's got no contents in it. And then over here in the dashboard for the database on the Cloudant side, no documents found in it. All right, so we're all just running empty here. We want to put the content, the image file, into the Cloud Object Storage web UI. By the way, you can do that with other tools, for example, as well. It doesn't have to be this particular UI. This is just kind of the easy way to demo it. I'm going to go ahead and run an activation poll too, so just so we can kind of see it get fired up. And here's our image options. So I just picked a few image options. It's my cat Peanut. So I'm going to take Peanut here, and I'm going to drag him into the object storage. Off he goes. And now that's been sent up and is sent in object storage. At some point, I have the interval set at every 1 minute, which is the default. It can be longer. It cannot be shorter. So sometime in the next minute, that image will be recognized that it's there by the trigger. The trigger will then go ahead and execute the action. And once everything's been classified, once the image has been classified, it'll get put into the Cloudant dashboard. So this is the like what point in the minute did I hit it and how long can I talk for? Let's wait for that activation to happen. I feel like I want to drop more images in there, but let's not press our luck with the demo gods today. Taking its time. Let's go ahead and check the dashboard just to see if anything's popped up. Nope, nothing there yet. Oh, there's the activation. So it activated the store it, and there's the results. Now it's in Cloud Object Storage. Now I need to wait like 5 seconds longer, and it'd been cool. Oh well. Here we go. We refresh it. Hey, there's the document, and we go inside the document. And remember, I dragged a picture of my cat. So it says, hey, 88% chance it's a tabby cat, 93% domestic cat, 97% just a cat, it's 97 feline. So it's got the general idea. And then here are those additional parameters, the bucket, the key, and the endpoint that I used for putting the file in the first place. So all that happened automatically for me because of the trigger. So that's I know in talking to the OpenWhisk side of the house that this is still a beta feature, but I found it to be pretty reliable. I'm sure they would love your feedback if you want to give it a shot. And offer some feedback. I'm sure they'd love to hear it. Until next time, cheers.